make sure that they're working.
Yeah.
I'm coming back in right now. Man, I can hear myself.
Well, I can't hear you through the mics though.
It's because I'm muted.
Excellent.
That's a good sign.
Yes, Tom, that's what you sound like.
I don't like it.
I need you to.
I got nothing. I don't. We got no audio. In the video, I unmuted the mic. Oh, there we're good. Alright, there's a delay. It's like a 30-second delay.
Willis coming?
Tough,
Yeah, I'm just wondering
tough.
where he
was
is.
on the
We're
day
missing
for
the chair if he
I see
is.
you're officially done.
Let's see.
He said,
Unless,
he,
Okay,
Jordan.
he's not coming.
Made a
so-
boo-boo, and he's such a miser. He's worse than I ever was. And it's a family joke.
Look at all those people smiling.
He
as
always
they're
wants
going
to.
home.
What in the world is this? I don't mean ugly way. Somebody, Jordan generally go to me and he'll say, "Oh, let me look." You know, and he says, "Oh," and he'll say the number. I'm like, Jordan, you know, all the stuff that I do, but he said, "You know,
I
I
made a
enjoyed it."
mistake about
I made a lot of
4:20. I
friends,
went down to
met a lot of
Canyon.
people, enjoyed the labor, and everything was good. He said, "But
Oh,
I just don't have any time to myself." I said, "That's life." There you go.
There's a lot of traffic in town
Yep,
now.
yep.
All right.
We're working to see if we can get Ellis on board, but we did rehearse earlier, so everything should be working.
All right, well, are you substantially involved in that effort? Because
I
you
am
are
not. I can
you are
grab a
first
mouse
up
and we
here,
can.
so I'm going to go ahead and get us started.
joining now.
Position health.
Excellent. We have them on board. I'm gonna grab a mouse and we'll be right back.
And
Very good.
to meet the first needs and values of landowners and society and substantial
All right, I'm going to wake everybody up here.
A forest. To maintain the forest.
I'm gonna put some caps underneath it.
So,
You know, pound it, the cap's gonna go off.
so I guess if you have a forest and don't cut trees down, you're a silviculturist and you fall on the
Somebody
hand.
gave him a nice
I mean, is that
this,
is
and they had little
that what I
flowers on
understand?
the box. So you whack it. See, hang on. While you're going, okay. All right, welcome to the April work session for Louisa County Planning Commission. We will begin now, and we're going to begin in the order of business with focus area plans. Mr. Eglin.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the commission. We made good progress in the last meeting, talking about the focus areas. It was requested, there was 2 bits of language that was requested to be added to all of the focus areas. I apologize, my screen is not working here, so let me try to. Hopefully you all can see that.
While you're working on that, Mr. Quarles, are you present with us?
I am.
Very good. Glad to hear you, sir.
So the first, my screen is up, thank you. So the first bit of language we added to design characters was promote shared driveways and interparcel connectivity for commercial industrial uses. That was the request to be added to all of the focus areas, that second part of the sentence. And then you also have at the bottom, future development near the interstate should contribute towards transportation solutions. So obviously not all the growth areas are located near interstate. So if you go through your packet, some of them called out specific names. So for example, if we scroll on down to the Ferncliff growth area. Actually, it's not a good example. Let's go down to future development near Route 15, Route 33, and Clockner Road should contribute toward transportation solutions. So what I did is pulled out the main routes that go through those growth areas and called them out by name. But obviously, the goal of that sentence would be is if you are a new development and you are going to have transportation impact, then you should contribute towards the solution of that during your process. And one of the reasons we deferred this item to another work session was to give an opportunity for Commissioner Quarles and Commissioner Goodwin to participate, especially since Commissioner Quarles shares a growth area with the Green Springs Historic District, or Green Springs District, I'm sorry. All those things are in that area. And so I leave it up whether we want to go growth area by growth area, or perhaps we start with the Zion's growth area and talk about all the items that are in there.
I would suggest that we begin with the growth areas for Mr. Quarles and Mr. Goodwin.
Understood. There we go. Mr. Quarles, can you see the screen now that I've stopped scrolling? Or can you
I
just
can't
see
see the screen. I'm looking at the distinguished group in the gallery.
So I'll visually depict it. So obviously, both Commissioner Dickerson and Commissioner Quarles are well aware that Route 15 pretty much divides their election districts, and that on the left side of 15, where you have the Best Western, IHOP, 7-Eleven, and other things, you have a large pocket of low low-density residential designation for the future land use map for 2040. On the right-hand side, you have a majority of pink for mixed use. So everything in the Walmart distribution center area, Walmart, other side of the road going down to 250, and then going down 250 is a strip of mixed use. There actually are two industrial parks that are in this area, but they have the designation mixed use and not the designation industrial, which you would think that they would have. And there's also some residential parcels that have designation of mixed use as well. And so going through the design criteria, a lot of the things we had in there were, again, future development near interstate should contribute towards transportation solutions. Large and regionally sized businesses should mitigate their impact to fire and EMS, sheriff, schools, and general services, which is usually handled by a public facilities review of a rezoning or a conditional use permit. We should be promoting agricultural and small neighborhood scale business, because there are a lot of farms, not only in the Route 15 corridor where the Green Springs Historic District is, but there are a lot of farms on Route 250 heading towards Ferncliff. Walking network should be established in the area. Believe it or not, if you park in the Walmart shopping center, it's you're playing Frogger to walk to Lowe's, because there is not a crosswalk. You're also playing Frogger to go across the street to Made in Asia or a cell phone store or anything on the other side. So that ends up you having an individual getting in a car from Walmart and driving to several other points within that traffic intersection, adding on to transportation congestion issues. So one of the reasons that walking network should be established is more for the future development and making sure that if you park in one place, you can perhaps walk to another store in the same parking lot. Avoid supporting commercial strip development. That goes without saying. Solar development should be encouraged on parking lots and rooftops of commercial industrial structures to preserve agricultural integrity. There isn't a lot of agricultural within this growth area, but there is a lot of impervious surface that perhaps solar could co-locate on. If that was a project that was come before us for review. And then looking for small mixed use commercial development and kind of promoting a small town mixed use development. So a lot of the plan unit developments we've seen come through Zion's Crossroad are apartments and townhomes and single family and commercial, all kind of spread out, but not usually buildings that mix those uses together, such as commercial on the first floor, residential on the second, some parallel parking in there to allow for work, shop, live in one area. And so that's the gear of, as opposed to separating out the uses, perhaps when we're future planning unit developments and resort developments, so we ask for a combination of uses and get the most use within the acreage that we have. The best bang for your buck, right? And so that's just going, as you can tell from the last meeting, we have a lot of character items within here, because we have a lot of growth in this area. Questions?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Goodwin.
Tom, you and I have had several discussions about this. I'm going back to the general transportation introduction. And there are a couple of topics that we have discussed that I'd like for the commission and staff to consider. One is that we talked about increased setbacks in the growth areas, in these focus areas. That's for two reasons: to enhance traffic flow, number one, cut down on distractions, and also to allow for future road growth requirements. The other thing that we discussed is coordinated landscape plans, so that we don't go from one landscape layout to, the next one is a replica of the Sierra Desert because it's a Mexican restaurant, and then it just, there's no flow of landscape plans through the area, through the main roads. Show the VDOT plans where they exist. I know they exist for the New Bridge area, Route 208, Lake Anna. We ought to show that for the readers' interest, so that if they're thinking about coming here, they know that they're going to be asked to respect that in case we can get it funded one day. And then the other one we talked about was enhanced architectural standards, that every business has an array from the simple cinder block up to the brick facade. And we want to make the entrances into the county, I'm going back to the gateway concepts in these areas. We want to make the entrances as nice as we possibly can. So I'd like to keep that on the agenda as we go through these. Some of them apply to every one of them, and some of them just apply to one or two.
Commissioner Goodwin, you bring a good point. I want to hit a couple of existing code sections that address that, but we'll talk generally about the existing code sections because perhaps we want to add more or unique things to different focus areas, right? So if you are designated mixed use pink or industrial gray, your front setback typically is going to be, if you weren't designated that 100 feet from Route 15 or 250 or the major roads, you actually have a decreased setback as part of the growth areas when it was passed in February of 2021, where it's only a 50-foot setback. So we would have to change, I think, Code Section 86-115 and 116, don't quote me, on going back from 50 to perhaps 80 or 100. But we did allow buildings to be closer to the road in February of 2021 with that designation. There are, pursuant to 86-124 and 123 in the growth area, architectural standards in these areas and landscaping standards. And as you mentioned, the transportation study, this particular growth area is the only one that has a recent transportation study available, which I put into the focus areas you can see on your screen. And it was it's through the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission. It was done in 2022. It was called the Zion's Crossroads Small Area Study Map Transportation Plan. It was a joint plan between Fluvanna and Louisa County and the TJPDC, and it called for things such as around about a 250 and 15, which we constantly apply for in Smart Scale but haven't gotten funded. We did attempt to apply for a bow tie in the years past, but we haven't brought that idea back. We also, and there's also in this plan an idea for future development having off streets, as opposed to everybody using Route 15, that the future development start having hammerheads to connect to each other as they develop out. So that you can get into perhaps I'll just say the Walmart shopping center because everybody knows where that is, that you could actually have more than one way out. I mean, there's two ways out on 15, but you can't turn left on 15 when you're going down towards the Dollar Tree. So there's really only one way to go left, and that's at the main light. So I wanted to bring, there are already some mechanisms for architectural renderings, landscaping. This is the only focus area that has a recently updated transportation study. So that's why I have mentioned it in this plan.
Could you follow up?
Yes.
Sure. I assume it's from an earlier transportation study, but there is a set of plans for the Lake Anna 208 area that I am very adamant about protecting that land. I don't know when we'll get it funded, but if we start building within those right-of-ways to straightening those curves, we'll never get it funded. As soon as you put real estate properties on there, the cost just skyrockets. And I think people ought to know that if they are looking to develop in those areas, they're going to be expected to get out of that right-of-way area so we can continue to pursue funding for that one curvy section from the bridge all the way to the Food Line area and maybe all the way to 522.
So I did add the sentence into the Lake Growth area, the future development along Route 522 and 208 should contribute towards transportation solutions. We could add on to that sentence if you want, if you think that's too broad. The challenge we have, though, is, again, if you're designated pink or gray on the map, you're going to have a 50-foot setback to one of those two roads as opposed to the standard 100.
Right.
And so we would actually have to modify the code to increase that setback again in order to alleviate the concern I think you have of possible future right-of-way.
I would like to see that plan, some smaller version of it, if it's not included in this section. I'd like to see it included as part of the appendix and referred to in this section so people can see what we're talking about. If they want details, they can come in and look at it, but at least enough to give them an idea that we have an intent to protect that area, because it is a goal one day to get those roads straightened. We're still having the accidents.
We can reach, Linda and I can reach out to VDOT and see if
And
they're
with respect to setbacks, I know that this was maybe 2 years ago. Josh was heading up the department then, and we showed a video of Parham Road between Route 1 and Route 33 Staples Mill. Where if you drive down, most of the members that were here remember that. If you drive down that road, you have no idea that there's a J. Sargent Reynolds over there, that there's a Ferguson Plumbing, and then we did a fly up and a look down, and you could see all the commercial businesses were on Parham Road, but when you were on the road, you saw nothing. And it did not impede traffic, and that was one of the goals that we wanted to do with these gateways coming into the county, where we encouraged growth, but it's got to be out of the way enough so that when you come in, you have a welcoming view of Louisa County, the county you're coming into, and not another commercial strip. So I'd like to pursue that as well and not let that fall off the table. And that setback includes the parking lot, not the building.
So currently, parking is allowed in setbacks, pretty much up to the property line.
know that.
The growth area is a calculation of trees and shrubs. There is not a requirement for a certain width of vegetation between the right-of-way line and the front. And so really, it would require 3 changes to the code. Just we're talking out loud is increasing the front setback from 50 to 100 in the growth area, requiring a minimum buffer width between the property line or edge of the right-of-way and inward of vegetation, and then not allowing for parking to be within a certain amount of feet, because parking currently doesn't have to meet setbacks.
Yeah, all that was on the table 2 years ago, and we seem to have kind of forgotten it, and I haven't. I want to see us get back into a discussion on that. So, I mean, we even talked about getting videos and some of the verbiage from Hilton Head. When you drive into that, I know we're not Hilton Head, but the way they manage commercial growth, when you're coming into that, you don't realize that you're coming into Hilton Head until you pop. There it is. And you pass all of that just like Parham Road and don't even know it's there. So there's signage, but even that's under ordinance. So,
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Quarles.
The changing of the setbacks, I don't agree with. I don't see where that helps. I think that it's going to hinder businesses when you're talking about parking lots and everything else being included in those setbacks. With respect to Commissioner Goodwin, we don't have a Parham Road situation. We have a situation at Zion where We have businesses there and businesses that are slated to come. And I think if we put those setbacks in place, we may limit the possibilities there. I don't think that, I think we have setbacks that are set up now as far as in the growth areas, and I think we should probably leave them where they are, especially when you're including parking lots, especially for the Zion Crossroads area. You know, maybe that works at the lake, but, you know, or that district, but it would hinder things at Zion Crossroads. I could see that.
Commissioner Quarles, did you have any questions or comments about the Zion's Crossroad growth area?
No, that's the only thing. I don't know if you could hear me. It kind of delayed for a second after. Did you hear all of what I said?
Yeah, we heard you clearly.
Okay, all right.
I just wanted to double check on Zion's Crossroad. Were there any other growth areas that either Commissioner Quarles or Goodwin would like to discuss or talk about in the packet?
Mine are more general.
No, I think I'm fine.
Did any other commissioner wish to have any observations on any of these small area plans?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Dickerson?
just one observation. When you look at the Shannon Hill focus area plan, we have a Shannon Hill Industrial Park, but everything's labeled Shannon Hill Regional Business Park. Should we have one name or two names or three names?
The formal name is Shannon Hill Regional Business Park. I can obviously make that correction for you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for pointing that out.
Anyone else? Then, Mr. Eglin, what do you see as the timeline for moving this, or the next steps for moving this forward?
I believe the next steps would be for us to, if you would like to direct staff to inform county administration that you believe that this is ready for the Board of Supervisors to perhaps take a look at or do a work session on, or perhaps have a committee to review, that if you'd like to put it through to the Board of Supervisors level, just let us know and we can do that.
All right, Mr. Goodwin, with your previous comments and Mr. Quarles' input, what changes would be necessary, or what addition would be necessary to move to that point to satisfy one or both concerns?
I have ideas of, as Mr. Eglin said, we're going to have to go to several sections in the code and amend them if the commission as a whole agrees. But I'd like to see us finish out on those 4 or 5 topics that I brought out, to see what the sense of the board is, to discuss it, and then when we take it, it goes as a package so that the board knows what they're voting on, not, well, here's a little piece of it, and here's another little piece of it. It comes up as a complete package so they get a vision of what it is that we're recommending and what they're approving.
So I suppose then at the next commission meeting, if possible, if we could get all of these pieces tied together so that we could have a more thorough discussion where we want to see it put. So we'll have the whole thing ready to
I
go.
again offer my time to come up and sit down with, I've talked with Tom and I've talked with Chris on this, and we haven't gotten it done. But again, find a time and I'm here. I'm retired. I know you all are not. I respect the fact that you have other jobs to do in your position, but and anybody else that wants to be a part of that, I'm fine with that. I don't want to work behind a curtain, but I want to address the issues to see what it is we really would like to see in these 5 entrance points. I'll be honest with you, and with respect to Commissioner Quarles, Zion's Crossroads is too far gone. To put anything into place now, you're only affecting a couple of things, and most of those are on the south side of 64. The rest of it is already there. But we've heard citizens' input about, and I'll take some of the more damning descriptions. It looks like a truck stop and those types of things, because we didn't get ahead of it. We didn't describe what we wanted before we got attracted to the business. Commissioner Quarles, yes, we want business. And I think businesses will come here under our terms if we've set them there. But if we don't have terms, we're going to end up with whatever they want. They're going to come in, we're going to see the dollar sign. And that's not what planning is all about in my mind.
Very good.
So yes, I am willing to work on it, and I'm more, anyone who wants to work on it, more than welcome your participation, so.
Mr. Eglin, do you think possibly by the May meeting, working with Mr. Goodwin and whoever else on the planning commission would like to join?
Sure.
It's an open invitation.
So just for a point of clarification, are we looking to, or do we feel like we're okay with the focus areas as we have them drafted now? We want to create a memo that goes with the focus areas to talk about decreasing the setbacks, and having a minimum landscape requirement, making sure parking's not in the front. Would we like to have that in a memo with a recommendation from to look at it, or are we looking to add those particular bullet points to each of the focus areas themselves, just so I can get some direction on that?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Goodwin.
I think we need to have a reference in the general, the introductory section. Just like we have references there now, it's bullets. And then we're going to have to go through the code with different places where that's covered and try to decide as a group are we satisfied with what we got? Do we want to see something different? Mm-hmm. And we're going to have to look at each one of those code sections. Say, okay, if the setback's 10 feet, we want it to be 200 feet, then we're going to propose a change. If it's going to include parking lots or not, then we propose a change or not. But we're going to have to look at each section, and then somehow when it goes before this board as a preview, so that when it goes to this commission, when it goes before the board, they really have a good understanding of what it is we're proposing and what it entails.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Quarles.
I listened to the Mr. Goodwin's comments, Commissioner Goodwin's comments. I think if you look at all the new growth, anything that's grown or been produced since the truck stop, I mean, the truck stop was years ago. So that was there long before the Lowe's and the Walmart and everything like that. But I think if you look at those, the model for those things, I don't think that, in respect to what Mr. Goodwin said, it doesn't look like a truck stop. The new things that are there were under the old code of 50 feet, and I don't think that it looks horrible. I don't think that you can do better than that. When you talk about the gas stations and the truck stops there, they were there long before all this other growth. So I don't understand why we would want to change. When you say it's too far gone, well, I don't know how you're going to get rid of a truck stop that's been there for years. How are you going to get rid of gas stations that have been there for years? But when you talk about the things that have come since then, I think that we have a plan. It's not like we weren't operating with it without a plan. I think that the designation now is 50 feet, and you want to move it to 100 feet, including parking. I don't think that makes any sense. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say I think that's probably a part of the discussion we need to have in each of the areas, not just Zion. Zion Crossroads, maybe it's not prudent to do that there, but for each of the other areas, we need to have some discussion. I do agree with the Route 208 from Newbridge to Ware's Crossroads, that because of the transportation opportunity there, we ought to limit the amount of, we ought to increase the setback to limit the amount of encroachment on the setback we'd have, so there's opportunity for transportation fixes in the future. So I think there are different of these small area plans that maybe could benefit from that sort of thing, and some maybe couldn't benefit. So it's just a discussion that we need to have once we have identified all the code sections and we know what all the pieces are, and say, would apply here, would it not apply there, would be kind of where we wind up, if that's what I understand Mr. Goodwin proposing as well. Does that make sense, Mr. Quarles?
Yes, but when you talk about the possible improvements, I mean, when you're talking about, I think you're talking about 208, I think that would probably fall under eminent domain, wouldn't it? If you had to widen or something like that, wouldn't that fall under that rather than trying to carve out 50 feet of setback?
Well, I'm sure there's an eminent domain piece if you have to come in and condemn real estate to build a road. But if you've put in a requirement that you can't build less than 100 feet from the road, then all you're doing is condemning real estate. You're not dealing with structures and parking and all that sort of thing, is what I'm saying. So there's going to be an eminent domain issue regardless with a transportation upgrade. But we're trying to make sure that construction is not placed at risk by putting it in what might be the roadway.
Okay, all right, I agree.
As distasteful, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Goodman.
as distasteful as eminent domain is, it comes with a huge cost.
I'm sure.
When you negotiate the cost of taking that structure, whether it's a supermarket or whatever, it doesn't come free just because you use the eminent domain. The price jumps way up, and I think we ought to avoid that if we ever want to see that road improved.
Right. So I think if Mr. Quarles, you and Mr. Goodwin are in agreement, then what we do is we get Mr. Eglin to produce all of the, go through the code and produce all of the areas of impact, and we go back and look at it area by area and see what applies to which area. And maybe it does to some and not to others, and we just settle it that way. Then we'll have one piece to pass on to the board.
That was my exact thought. The first, go ahead, Commissioner Quarles.
No, that makes sense. I agree with that.
So code sections that come to mind are 86-115, which is parcels that are outside of a growth area that are along certain corridors, such as 208-15, that are specifically marked 100 feet. 86-116, which is the growth area that allows it to go down to 50. 86-123, which is landscape standards within the growth area. And then I can get with Linda about any other code sections. We can create that list for you for the next work session. And then we can just go through code by code and what your recommendation would be to change to see your vision come to light if the Board of Supervisors was to take action on that.
Very good. Any other comments from the Planning Commission?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Kersey?
last meeting you and I believe you agreed with me that we would request the number of lots in the low-density residential areas in these growth areas. Do we have that information?
I do not have it.
Kersey, I thought you weren't going to ask.
You can always count on me coming back.
So we work with our GIS coordinator, Matthias Smith, to pull some information. And of course, he was talking to me that he asked after this meeting if there was a way that you all wanted something visually represented, and I need to get some information so that he could create a map to give you a visual representation. So he ran some numbers based off 27,000 parcels in the county. And he calculated that of the 27,000 parcels, there are 1,356 parcels that are 1.5 acres or less with road frontage. And so that kind of is, we know the minimum lot size for constructing a home is 1.5 acres. He came up with 1,356 parcels that are 1.5 acres or less with road frontage that could possibly be divided because they have frontage. Let's see here. There are 412 parcels that are 1.5 acres or less with road frontage that is vacant currently, which means it doesn't have an address on it at this time. We see if I have any other information on here. And again, this information excludes the towns, parcels of zone, commercial, industrial, other things of that nature. And so with kind of that basic information, obviously tonight I could pull up on the GIS map, we could zoom down and see all the green stars and they indicate all the places that an address exists. Now, it doesn't mean that everywhere has an existing home or building, but it's a pretty good visual indicator. And we could see what's going on around that growth area. But of course, we're happy to create a map if you're looking for specific data. Such as I want to know how many parcels are 1.5 acres or greater that are zone agricultural and residential within around the growth area. We could create a visual representation for you, but I just kind of want to throw a few numbers at you and see what it is you're really looking for. I can pull up the map and we can kind of hover around and see how many green addresses pop up in certain areas.
I think it certainly would be helpful to have that visual. I don't know whether the other commissioners are interested or not. I have it other than the chairman.
So what would you be looking for? A certain acreage? Would you want to start with 1.5 acres or greater within a reasonable distance around the growth area?
Reasonable distance, and of
Okay.
course within the growth area. I mean, we're already discussing that we're growing too fast, and maybe we want to reduce that residential portion. Maybe we already have enough lots. So does the county want to encourage more growth in these growth areas of a residential nature? I'm not sure.
So-
I don't have the figures to justify
So
it.
I'm going to drill down a little further because that's why I'm glad we're having this conversation. And I just want to throw a couple figures out, is that not all the growth areas, but a lot of them have low-density residential designation in them. Doesn't mean that all the parcels are residential, doesn't mean they're not all agricultural, and it doesn't mean they all don't have something on it. We could pull, and it sounds like you might want us to, in every growth area that has the designation low-density residential, pull how many parcels are zoned agricultural and residential.
Mm-hmm.
We could drill down even further and go how many are 1.5 acre or more. So it's just a matter, we could do a meat cleaver, I could drill on down, right? And so would that help if we start with a map of all of the yellowish orange color, low density residential, how many parcels is that? How many are 1.5 acres? How many of the parcels currently have an address on them out of the total, perhaps?
Sounds like a good place to start.
Yeah, I would think so, yeah.
I want to take a few notes. All right, so if that could be one map. We could also create a map for mixed use and industrial the same way. I don't know, but I don't think that's really the topic of the conversation. I don't think the question is how much industrial and commercial do we have in each growth area, because you can easily figure that out. Are you looking for a map that shows all of the residential zoning in the county and everything else is just turned off? Are you looking for a map that shows all the agricultural and vice versa? Does that help? Because, I mean, obviously I can put up the map of the entire county and turn on the zoning, if we could see all the different colors. I just want to see if there's, or perhaps maybe between now and our next meeting, if you shoot us an email of maybe what you're looking for, we could try to get a map to visually depict it. I'm just throwing ideas out there. to help you all paint a visual picture.
I'm not sure if Mr. Kersey agrees or not, but I'm primarily interested in the growth areas around Mineral and Lake Anna.
I guess, do we want to do the calculations for all the growth areas? Okay. All right, so recapping, I will talk to Matthias about first calculating how many parcels in a growth area, each growth area, and then how many of those are designated agricultural and residential. And then drilling down on those a little further of how many of those are developed, if we can pull that number. And then that'll leave us how many undeveloped parcels we have. And then if he has the time, we'll see if he can also give us which of those are 1.5 acres with road frontage or greater. And that might give you, I think, what you're looking for. And I appreciate your patience because I've been talking to Matthias on and off between this meeting of like, what can we do? What can we do? What kind of questions should I be asking so that we could get you a map?
Very good.
I certainly appreciate your effort. I knew it wasn't going to be an easy task.
Well, we'll see how easy it is between this meeting and the next.
Any other questions from the Planning Commission on the focus area plans? Very well. Thank you, Mr. Eglin, for your work on that. So next up, we have ordinance draft amendments, and what I would like to do at the beginning here in talking about ordinance draft amendments is go into executive session so we can get a response from Ms. Smith on some questions we'd asked. So we're going to go into executive session.
Uh-oh, well. Can you hear me now? Tom? Hello? Can you hear me? No.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can now.
Very good. I will now poll members to certify to the best of your knowledge only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and as identified in the motion for which the closed meeting was convened were discussed and considered by the board. If any member believes that the commission, if any member believes the commission varied from the purposes stated for the closed meeting, please state so and the reason prior to casting a vote. Mr. Brooks?
Yes, I do. What's the, yeah,
I believe no is the correct response. Unless you believe something was stated. Do you believe? No? Mr. Painting?
No.
Mr. Dickerson?
No.
Mr. Goodwin?
No.
Mr. Kersey?
No.
Mr. Quarles?
No.
And Mr. Disasway, no. Thank you. All right, we'd like to move on then with the proposed amendments to Chapter 86 Land Development Regulations. Ms. Buckler?
So at the last meeting, we briefly went through the items that we had been working on and we're going to bring for further discussion at this meeting. And in the memo, I'm just going to run through those again really quickly. We have amendments to several definitions. Two of those, emergency shelter and religious assembly. The Planning Commission has received several pieces of email correspondence from some individuals who would like to have further amendment to those definitions. And I believe you all, and we can go through that. We've got update to the short-term rental of a dwelling, which basically corrects the effective date of the original ordinance, and to add the resort development zoning district. The yard regulations for the A2 zoning district, remove the increased setback for other permitted structures greater than 50 feet in height. Amend provisions for subdivisions in the A2 zoning district. And this is just, and this is something that staff has been dealing with regarding the 3 bonus density lots for affordable housing purposes. Subdivision plat requirements and standards. We've included language to require submittal of a performance agreement for new subdivisions that require completion of those improvements, specifically road improvements, within a set time. Language added that clarifies the county has no obligation to install or maintain any of those improvements as part of the subdivision development based on language in the state code. Permits a maximum of 2 private lanes to be used in a subdivision, and requires that the guarantee posted with the county is renewed and reviewed every 24 months to ensure sufficient funds remain in place. Language has been added for plat approvals, that the private road disclosure language be included on all subdivision plats with new internal roads, that the roads are private until they have been accepted into the state system. And they will include a note that an entrance permit must be obtained from VDOT for access to each lot shown on the subdivision plat. Under the Lake Anna Shoreline Use and Design Standards, we've included language that clarifies that dry hydrants and restroom facilities will only be required in common areas if they are required by the Department of Fire and EMS and the Virginia Department of Health respectively for those facilities. And if those facilities are required, the location will be coordinated with Dominion Energy. There are proposed changes to the telecommunications regulations that clarifies that generators may be located on site, but only operated during power outages or testing. There's also additional information that I believe you have in a handout email as recommendation from the telecommunication consultant of additional language that they feel our ordinance needs to help with the review process of telecommunications facilities. Sign regulations. In your package, there is an original proposal, there's an alternative proposal, and we handed out an alternative number 2 because we are mostly dealing with electronic or electric message signs and the intensity of the lighting. And as we are doing more research, we're trying to come up with the best language that is the easiest to enforce and to make the ordinance better as far as electronic message signs are concerned. And then we included in your package a copy of the current interim road maintenance agreement that is used and a draft performance agreement to be used for subdivision development that would require the improvements to be completed in a certain period of time, and the developer would sign that performance agreement as part of the subdivision process. So that's the summary, and we can now go page by page, or if you have specific questions, however your preference is to go through this.
Let's kind of do a page turn on this, and we'll see if anyone has anything as we go.
Okay, so on the page 1, the changes to the division parcel, and that we talked about last time, that is 300 feet, the 4 is crossed through, it's not 4,300 feet.
I like that.
Yeah, and so we now have a division parcel that the residue parcel has 5 acres or more, or a minimum of 300 feet of existing state road frontage. It doesn't have to have both to be considered a residue parcel. For emergency shelter, the proposed definition is there in front of you, and the language that we have received comments on through, the Planning Commission has received comments on through email, would be to, that a religious assembly may operate an emergency shelter for the duration of a state or locally declared state of emergency. The additional language states, or to provide hypothermia shelter from November through March without benefit of a conditional use permit. So that's the additional requested language that that you all have received for consideration from this outside, these outside individuals.
Mr. Goodwin?
A question for staff on this, or at least a comment, observation. Spent quite a bit of time in the state code, and I believe that between the current ordinance, the proposed ordinance, the community interest, we have confused issues. In the state code, there is an emergency shelter, and they also refer to a homeless shelter. In the language here and in some of the correspondence that I have received, I think it crosses the line into homeless shelter, which in this section of the code, we are talking about emergency shelter. Now, according to the Code of Virginia, only the governor in a statewide event or local government in a local event can declare a state of emergency and activate an emergency shelter. That's in the code. Now, the code is less clear on requirements for a homeless shelter. But on a homeless shelter, there is no reference to temperatures. Emergency shelter, yes. So I think, and yes, a how's it referred to? A religious assembly can be part of an emergency response, but they have to be part of the county's emergency management plan. It's not a last-minute decision, we want to open the doors, because that plan is submitted to Richmond. It's maintained by the Department of Emergency Services in a database that talks about capacity, points of contact, all of that sort of stuff. So whether it's a state or local emergency, they know how to reach out and activate. But it has to be activated by the governor or local government. I think, and Mr. Chair, I'm making this to the commission, I think we need to be really clear on whether we are talking about an emergency shelter or a homeless shelter.
Okay.
Because the verbiage that I'm seeing mixes the two.
Okay.
I will add that with respect to the limit of 40 degrees, the 3 winter months in this part of Virginia average 32, 34, and 37 degrees. So if you take the difference between 32 and 40 and 34, and it's going to be well over 50% of the nights that would qualify. And I've looked at other localities, they set that breaking point at 32 degrees. Not all of them, but certainly lower than 40, just because that is what you get this time of the year. But again, if we're talking about a homeless shelter, it has nothing to do with temperature. It has to do with the homeless population and how you want to help manage that. Does that make sense to you?
It does, and I was hoping that Chris was going to be around. This was initiated through administration, so we will make sure that Chris gets, where they get this information, and that we can look at these definitions further.
Regards this section, section of the code is on emergency shelter, and the only thing that I would recommend that we consider, staff and the commission, is that religious assembly may operate an emergency shelter if included under the local emergency management plan for the duration of the state of emergency. They have to be part of that database. Again, not homeless, emergency. And we will be, I think, well served if we can keep those two separate and deal with them separately. Any questions for me?
I have a question.
Sure.
Mr. Quarles.
George, are you saying that when you say that they have to be I guess, compliant with that, do these churches have to be registered with the emergency system?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Guerrero.
They have to be included in the emergency response plan of the locality or the state, because a database of all of the states and local assets are maintained by the Department of Emergency Services. So if they have an emergency, let's just say in a surrounding county, and they overflow their capability, they know that there's a certain capability in Louisa that they can call and say, hey, can you help us out? And if you're not part of the emergency plan, then Department of Emergency Services doesn't know to call and say, hey, can you help us out? So yes, according to the code, there's a database that is maintained by the Department of Emergency Services. Does that answer your question?
I think so, George. So all the churches have to be registered with that. Is that what you're saying?
They have to be part of the local emergency management plan.
if they
Okay.
intend to operate an emergency shelter according to the Code of Virginia.
Correct.
I got it. I understand.
So, Mr.
Any
Coon-
other questions for me on what I said?
No, sir, I was just trying to update.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
Mr.
Chairman.
Coon.
Mr. Coon, before you walk away, and Ms. Buckler, for both of you, so Louisa County operates emergency shelters for emergencies under the Code of Virginia, I'm sure. I'm sure we do. In our ordinances, we have something called an emergency shelter here that addresses only temporarily or permanently homeless people, the way it's currently written. So if we have an emergency shelter that operates under the Code of Virginia for emergency purposes, what's that defined as? I mean, it seems like this definition is not pointing to that, like it's pointing to something else entirely. So do we have a problem right now within our ordinances that, to where we are not, even the way we operate as a local government, or do we have a definition problem in our ordinance that points to the wrong thing
Yes.
that we need to correct?
For clarity, we should probably update that.
Okay, so it looks like we have several things we need to reorganize here to look at and maybe fix these problems. It's a statement. You can agree or disagree. You don't have to, or you can just smile.
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. I think we need to fix them, yeah.
So you want us to change emergency shelter to what?
Well, what I think the discussion is here is that if we're operating emergency shelters within the county under the guidance of the Code of Virginia to respond to emergencies, then our definition of emergency shelter should correctly state what that shelter is, rather than this, because this is not what that is. So
So
we
again,
need to,
what-
however it needs to be fixed, if there's a state code definition for what an emergency shelter is, maybe we need to work off of that definition.
Well, I mean, we can always add the state definition for emergency shelter, but the definition that's here in front of you, what options do you guys think it should be called?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Goodwin?
it is an emergency shelter, and you're required to have an emergency management plan. The issue that we're bringing up is an emergency shelter has nothing to do with homeless. That sentence needs to come out. What needs to go in is the purpose of an emergency shelter. And a good example was 3 years ago, January, when we lost power, almost had nothing to do with homeless, but we opened up emergency shelters. Now, if we want a section in our code on homeless shelters, and that's a whole separate deal in the Code of Virginia than an emergency shelter.
So what's before you today that we are calling emergency shelter as of right now and have been for quite some time? What is the suggested edit for this definition that's before you today? Because we can add emergency shelter as defined in the state code, it will replace emergency shelter. We'll make sure we add that, so when we
Yeah.
go to do the public hearing, get emergency shelter correctly defined. But what's here in front of you today, is it homeless shelter that you would suggest that we amend?
Go back over the things when you were out of the room.
Yeah, Mr. Goodwin?
Okay, I would suggest a facility complying with the definition of an emergency shelter in the Code of Virginia and quote that section, period. Then a religious assembly may operate an emergency shelter if included in the county's emergency management plan for the duration. They got to be part of our plan. They can't just be operating out there on their own.
So the intent was for that purpose, that if they wanted to operate on their own, they would be able to.
We're trying to solve two problems here because we recognize one definition is wrong. So we're trying to fix that definition and then look at the other problem that was presented here as well.
So we'll
So you're
take
trying to,
we'll take emergency shelter from the state code and we'll replace that with this one. So then Because if it's already in the state code and it's defined that way, and we want to make sure it's defined that way,
Right.
we'll just
Right.
use that one, put it in there.
And if
and
a
then we can
religious
update.
assembly is operating a facility as an emergency facility, they have to be part of the county's emergency management plan, because all that gets submitted to Richmond, and it's kept statewide database by the Department of Emergency Services so that they know what, so if they're not part of the county's plan, they cannot operate an emergency shelter. They can, if we allow it, a homeless shelter.
So you are suggesting we amend this definition right now that says emergency shelter to homeless shelter?
That's the second.
You gotta have, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Goodwin,
if I can
but-
just continue, you gotta have a definition for both. There,
Emergency shelter we will use from the state code. We will update that, so the emergency shelter as defined in the state
Okay.
code will replace emergency shelter. But so the definition that you see today,
all right, then if you're gonna rename this homeless shelter, then the second sentence doesn't start out with emergency shelters. Starts out with homeless shelters. A religious assembly may operate a homeless shelter. Delete for the duration of a state or locally declared state of an emergency. It has nothing to do with that.
so
Pardon?
can I speak to that?
Sure.
Item so that was done intentionally because of the situation that, yes, while we're operating during states of emergency, there are individuals that may need assistance through these churches as well. So if they want to provide service in addition to what the county's doing, wouldn't we want that type of service being provided?
The code doesn't provide for that. They're saying if
This definition would provide for it, though, because right now they're able to do it if they get a CUP.
not sure we can do something that's out of compliance with the code. The code says if you're going to have a recognized emergency thing, which you're talking about here, it's got to be registered in Richmond. A homeless shelter, no.
That's what we're talking about. We're changing this to homeless shelter.
Then it doesn't have anything to do with the duration of a locally declared state of emergency. That goes under emergency shelters.
Sir, the reason why it's in there is so that they don't have to obtain a CUP to do that use. So they can provide temporary homeless shelter housing during states of emergency without a CUP. If they want to do it outside of a state of emergency, they would need to obtain a CUP. That's the sole reason that language is in there. So if you remove that, there's no reason for us to have this conversation, because that's what's being added.
So essentially what Mr. Kuhn is saying is that a church who wished to do this under this provision, the way it's written, would not be a part of the state's database, would not be relied on for the state's database. They would simply be operating this shelter, and they would be allowed to do it without a CUP, but only during times when state of emergency is declared, which is it doesn't draw them into any of the requirements of the state emergency response or the local emergency response plan. It just allows for them to do it without a CUP during these periods of time.
Okay.
All right, so we've got, boy, this one really, gonna need to see some of this in print to get happy with it finally. But, Why don't we, let's see. We're gonna have to talk about all these tonight anyway. We'll go on. Are we all right now with the difference between emergency shelter and homeless shelter?
Momentarily.
Momentarily, for the short term. Go ahead, Ms. Buckley, let's move on and we'll,
Off-grid construction, a definition has been added for building a home without connecting to utilities. They're self-sufficient and generate their own power and water. These are allowed in the building code and would have to meet all requirements of the USBC. There was just nothing in our ordinance that really addressed off-grid construction, and we've had several requests to the building official for that type of construction. For private lane, we have removed the words in divisions for residential use serving less than 3 lots only, and removed for agricultural use, which wasn't really defined and has been used, I think, twice in the time that it's been in the ordinance. Religious assembly kind of mirrors the emergency shelter, the change in the language, so that will be updated to mirror what was just discussed for emergency shelter regarding the religious assemblies.
Since we've already made the corrections to what we're now calling a homeless shelter, can't we just eliminate that last sentence? That's not really the definition of religious, that's a function.
So would
We
we
just stop it at by a religious organization. That's a definition.
you know, it seems to me like it should be, since that's accessory to it more or less, I use that word, but maybe that's not the right word, but we're allowing it under religious assembly. It seems to me like the sentence should be over here and not under homeless shelter. Because here's when you're saying what the religious assembly can do. Homeless shelter just defines
We
what
have
it
it over
is.
there.
So, well,
It's exactly the same.
I know, but you don't need it over there. You need it over here instead, don't you?
Okay. One or the other. I don't think we need it in two places.
So if we had the emergency, and then we had the religious exemption, you're right, we don't need the definition of the homeless shelter.
that,
That wasn't exactly where I was heading. I thought it was
No.
probably a good idea to have
Okay.
the definition of the homeless shelter. We just didn't need, under the definition of the homeless
Homeless-
shelter,
the
to say
religious
who could
assembly.
operate. Yeah,
Yeah.
put that under religious assembly, and because they're the ones that are getting the allowance to operate that thing at a certain period of time. You just define what that thing is somewhere else.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Coons?
So the reason why we include it in there is because, at least now, what we're calling the homeless shelter, nonprofits or other organizations could also apply for that, but they wouldn't be able to do it during the state of emergency. And then just for sake of clarity, we carried it over to religious assembly. So however you guys would like to address that.
Why wouldn't they be able to operate a homeless shelter during the state of emergency?
I'm sorry?
Why wouldn't, if a nonprofit came in with a CUP, had a piece of land, say, I want a CUP approval to put in a homeless shelter that's defined in your ordinance, and we granted them approval to do that, and they're operating a homeless shelter, why would they be limited? They couldn't do it during a time of emergency.
They wouldn't. They'd have the approval to do it.
Well, exactly. But I thought you just said they couldn't do it during a time of emergency.
A nonprofit that does not have a CUP would not.
Well, a nonprofit that doesn't have a CUP wouldn't be able to do it at all.
Correct.
And
That's why we included the religious assembly specifically in that definition. That's what I was explaining. The conversation was just we can remove homeless shelter because we're going to include it in religious assembly. And my statement was other organizations other than just a religious assembly may want to operate a homeless shelter.
I understand, but you call them nonprofits. There's a difference. I mean, religious assemblies are a type of nonprofit, but there are other nonprofits out there aren't religious assemblies.
Correct.
So if you just put in religious assembly in each place, then a nonprofit can never do this.
Correct.
Yes.
That's why we did it this way.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Goodwin.
I remember reading in the code that churches may not be restricted in their activity more stringently than other organizations. I don't remember others saying that other organizations, the inverse of that other organizations cannot be restricted to the extent that churches are.
Right.
So I think we need to do some research on that.
Sure. My only point in all of this is you either come in for a CUP or you operate it without one. Okay? And you come in for CUP, anybody can do that, anybody can get a CUP, anybody can operate one. If you write religious assembly over here may operate, then you're without a CUP, then you're saying only a religious assembly can do that. If you put the same words over here under the definition of homeless shelter, you have a duplication which doesn't do you any more good. Because
Just a clarification. Yes, sir.
but it's okay, I mean it's unnecessary, but
I mean, that's, when we go to enforce a zoning code, this is the type of information that is helpful. That when we're looking at the situation to make sure if it's a violation or not, these clarifications do assist staff in the execution of
Right.
enforcement.
all right. Well, it won't change things, so I won't argue then. But, yes, Mr. Goodwin, we do need to know exactly what we're talking about. It's always helpful.
I don't have anything else to add. I'd just go back. I
was
just
just
think
following
we
up.
need to have a clear vision of what the two different things are. Address them individually and clearly for what we want.
Yeah.
And I still believe we came into this meeting mixing issues, and the two
Yes.
issues are emergency and homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to see us address those separately as they are addressed separately in the code. That's,
Okay, well, for the time being, let's hold what we have on religious assembly and move on here. And cover a few more of these before we take a break.
Residue or residue parcel or lot, the same adjustments have been made to the 5 acres or more, or have a minimum of 300 feet of existing state road frontage. And we removed has VDOT approved access. Subdivision, we removed the sentence subdivided lots shall generally be less than 5 acres in front of less than 400 feet of existing state road frontage.
300 is darker. Yeah, that's why I just don't.
Vegetative buffer, we added the sentence the terms buffering or screening yard or any variation of these terms as used throughout the ordinance in conjunction with vegetative buffers shall include a yard or designated area with certain screening, like opaque fencing or landscaping materials required between abutting zoning districts or differing use intensities or between adjoining land uses for decreasing the adverse impact of differing uses and districts. As mentioned in the summary, short-term rental of a dwelling, we added the resort development district and corrected the date of the effective date of the ordinance.
Ms. Buckler, is there a reason why we're adding resort development here? Do we want people in resort development to suffer as well?
It was a Scrivener error. It was included the entire time. It just didn't make it into the ordinance.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Goodwin?
just a suggestion. I know you've verbally corrected this. but if you do a search on 4300, the 4 ought to have a strike-through. It's got the bowl on the 300, but there's no strike-throughs on the 4.
It is there, but it's right through the line of the 4. So it is really hard to see.
Oh, okay.
I did the same
didn't see
thing.
it.
I did the same thing when we were putting this together, and why isn't it stricken? But it is right through the line of the
Okay.
4.
As a lady on Saturday Night Live said, never mind.
But thank you for. For the yard regulations in the A2 district, removing the additional setback for structures that exceed 50 feet in height. In the R2 district for minimum lot width, this was just left out of this section. It's in all of the other sections that the minimum road frontage shall be provided as in section 86-118. For subdivisions, again, this is just a suggestion by staff is to remove the 3 additional lots for the density bonus for affordable housing, because currently there is no mechanism in place or guidelines for enforcement of that. When this was originally adopted, there was an affordable housing committee with the county. There is no longer that committee that the developers can meet with and get recommendations from. We've only had one subdivision that actually do the 3 density lots, and that was in 2012. We have one that is in the process now of trying to obtain those 3 additional lots. And they are working through their mechanism of how they are going to enforce those provisions that they wanted the county to enforce for them. Or under subdivision plat requirements, we have removed third-party review firm and added an engineer licensed in the state of Virginia. We've removed third-party under several other sections.
Did that say engineer/surveyor or vice versa?
We can add that. So that's under 86-567-4A, engineer or surveyor licensed in the state of Virginia. We've added the language for the requirement of the performance agreement, along with the interim road maintenance agreement that is currently in there, in the ordinance. We've added the language regarding the dedication of rights-of-way for streets and alleys as provided for in the state code, and that nothing in that section obligates the locality to install or maintain those facilities unless otherwise agreed to by the locality. Private lanes, we added language that a maximum of 2 separate private lanes can be used in a subdivision. Under the security, it was suggested that we require that the security for a project be reviewed every 24 months and be increased based on the market or the cost at that time. In looking at surrounding counties and other localities, this language actually came from Greene County, and I added the link there in the document to the engineering news record. That is the publication that Greene County uses to look at the cost every 2 years. It does require a subscription. Staff is open to any other suggestions that the Planning Commission may have on how to calculate that increase or every 2 years, whether it's just a flat percentage that it increases every 2 years that the developer has to increase their security with the county, or we use some publication like this that actually looks at the market cost.
I like the idea of looking at the market myself.
For final plats, we have added language that would require the, what we call the private road disclosure statement now on all subdivision plats with a new internal roadway that basically would state that the road is private until it has been accepted into the state secondary road system by VDOT. And language that an entrance permit must be obtained from the Virginia Department of Transportation for access to each lot shown on the subdivision plat. Under the Lake Anna shoreline regulations, under 86-655, we corrected the waiver section from 8622 to 119. And we added language that the dry hydrant or restroom facilities may be required if required by the Department of Fire and EMS for the dry hydrant and the Virginia Department of Health for the restroom facilities, and would be placed in a location in coordination with community development and those individual departments and Dominion Energy. But they would only be required if those agencies determined that there was a need for them, not the county.
Ms. Buckler, I'm gonna stop here if we can, because we need just a few minutes before the 7 o'clock meeting starts, so
Okay.
I appreciate it. Unless any of the commissioners has anything more at this point, we'll pick this up again during the discussion
Just
section.
one quick question.
Mr.
To
Goodwin?
your knowledge, are the electronic signs that the churches have in the county in compliance with what we're proposing? I know there are a number of them out there. Just to your knowledge, if you don't
We
have it.
don't know the answer to that question.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, very good. Well, in that case, this work session is adjourned, and we will reconvene at 7 o'clock.
Here.
Mr. Brooks?
Here.
Mr. Painting?
Here.
Mr. Disisway?
Here.
Mr. Dickerson?
Here.
Mr. Quarles?
Here.
Mr. Goodwin?
Here.
Mr. Percy?
Here.
Mr. Purcell?
Here.
Very good, thank you. Please rise while we have the invocation led by Commissioner Dickerson, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Painting.
Let us pray. Father God, thank you for bringing us together tonight to work on the business of the county. We thank you for those who came before us, who established Louisa County and perpetuated it. Help us to be good stewards of the human, physical, and environmental resources of the county as we make decisions tonight. Bless and protect each and every one of us and give us safe travels home once the meeting's over. In Jesus, our Savior's name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good, strong voice. Very good. We'll move on to the approval of the agenda. You have the agenda before you. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. Any comments on the agenda? Ms. Johnson, could we have a roll call to approve the agenda?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Painting?
Yes.
Mr. Disisway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Quarles?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Percy?
Yes.
Very good. The agenda is approved. Next up, we have the approval of Planning Commission minutes for the regular meeting February 13. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. The minutes appear in packet pages 2 through 6. Are there any comments on the minutes of the February meeting?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Goodwin,
I will be abstaining from voting since I was not present.
understand you'll be abstaining.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Quarles,
that would be the same for me. Well, no, that was February, right?
this is,
Did you say February?
this is the February meeting, yes.
Never mind, I was there then. I was present.
Very good. Any other comments? Very well, Ms. Johnson, can we have a roll call for approval?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Painting?
Yes.
Mr. Disisway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Quarles?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Abstain?
Mr. Percy?
Yes.
All right, minutes are approved as presented. Next up is consent agenda. We do not have a consent agenda for April, so we'll move on to the public address period. The public address period is a time in which the public can come to the microphone and speak to the Planning Commission about any topic that is not a public hearing tonight. I have several cards, so we'll get to those in a moment when I open the public comment period. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. If you're representing an organization, please let me know. That will give you 5 minutes to speak. So the public comment period is open, and I'm going to call on the folks with the cards first, and then we'll move on to anyone else. So first up is Mr. Dwayne Surgeon, I believe is the name. Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Louisa Homeless Coalition and would like to encourage the committee to adopt ordinance that allows for warming or hypothermia shelters during the winter months from November to March in religious organizations, churches, etc. As you know, it's mighty cold out there in the winter, and it's hard to sleep in your car in the middle of the winter or in a tent. So it's more of a problem than many people realize here in Louisa. And I hope that you will take good note of that and think about those people that are less fortunate than all of us here in Louisa that deserve to be cared for in these dire circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Surgeon. Next up is David McWilliams.
Good evening. My name is David McWilliams. I'm the pastor of Zion United Methodist Church and live in the Green Spring District. As you all know, there's a proposal to amend the definition for religious assemblies, and I would like to suggest an additional amendment that includes the opportunity for religious assemblies to provide hypothermia shelter from November through March without the requirement of a conditional use permit. In my opinion, it's an essential historic practice of the church to provide shelter and therefore shouldn't be subject to community or government approval. But in our current zoning laws, it requires 2 public hearings plus 2 government boards to vote on whether or not a church can do or not do a ministry of the church. And it just makes me wonder if we have so blatantly abandoned the separation of church and state. It makes me wonder if churches really should need the approval of their communities before they do something as simple as loving their neighbors. Because in Scripture, when Jesus talks about loving neighbor, both in the parable of the Good Samaritan and in his conversation with the rich young ruler, on both occasions it becomes abundantly clear that caring for the physical needs of the poor and the marginalized is essential to what Jesus means when he calls his community, his disciples, to love their neighbors. And so I believe it's the present responsibility of the church as the followers of Jesus within Louisa County to provide emergency winter shelter for persons experiencing homelessness in a county where there's otherwise no shelters available. I want to share with you a modern day parable written partially by Luther Smith. He writes that imagine our community is one giant skyscraper. The wealthiest people in our community, wanting the best views, elect to live in the penthouse, the top floor, and relegate the poorest members of the community to the bottom floors. Then a fire breaks out within the bottom floors, and the fire threatens the structural integrity of the building, and the fire alarms ring throughout. And so the people on the middle and the upper floors send down the best possible firefighters so that they can put out the fire and save the building, because otherwise the building comes crashing down if the bottom floors burn. But then imagine that there's a small fire just in the apartment of one particular person, and it threatens that person's life, but doesn't do anything to threaten the structural integrity of the building. Will they do the same in sending the fire department down? My invitation for us today as a community is that we wouldn't be so self-centered that we don't care about the poor unless it directly affects us. That we would at least allow our churches to care about the poor.
Thank you, Mr. McWilliams. Would anyone else? That was all the cards I have. So is there anyone else that would like to come forward and address the Planning Commission? Very well. Then I'm going to close the public comment period. Public comment period is closed. And we'll move on to unfinished business. And I don't think right now we have any unfinished business that we're not currently dealing with. We were discussing small area plans previously, and that is work ongoing. So we can move on then to public hearings. The first one being ordinance change 2025-02, proposed amendments to chapter 86. Mr. Kuhn.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. Starting on page 7, you can see my memo. And then all the way through 10, you can see the proposed changes to include the districts that would require CUP. The only update that I do have before you today is that in the definition, to account for the Cardinal News article that I believe was shared with all Planning Commission, that we changed the definition to actually state the sale or transaction of legally authorized controlled substances. So the item where somebody purchased something and they get a gift can be addressed. And then I sent an email just articulating the agricultural activity passive as the reason why we would want to include that is to avoid any risk that the cultivation of a regulated crop, such as hemp or marijuana, should it become legalized, would be interpreted as a retail activity simply because the end product is a controlled substance. This is just something to avoid subjecting farms to inappropriate zoning regulations intended for commercial retail operations. And just to address one other question I got, the entity that does regulate current hemp growth is the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. So, of course, if marijuana becomes legalized, the growth and cultivation would more than likely be managed by that organization as well. And I stand ready to answer any questions.
Does anyone have questions for the staff at this time? Very well, then we'll move on to the public comment period. I'm going to open the public comment period. Public comment period is open. Typically, the first person to address on the public comment period is the applicant. Since this is a staff presentation, we'll dispense with that. And we'll move directly to public address. I do not have any cards for this topic. If anyone in the audience would like to step forward and address the Planning Commission on this topic, please do so. Yes, sir, please come forward. State your name and your voting district, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the commission. And please let me know if you represent an organization.
My name is Bridge Hamilton. I'm from the Cuckoo District. Just here to see what was going on, first and foremost.
Okay.
But I'm here to also just let you guys know that I like what y'all are doing, and I think it's appropriate for the time. And I think if we do it right and with white gloves, it'll be safe and very healthy for the economy and just for people in general as we find out more about medicine. And I just want to encourage you guys to be open-minded and just really do some research if you're curious about it, because there's enough research out here that doesn't involve the DEA website. That's medical research here. And I just encourage you guys to dive deep into it, because I think the biggest thing is miseducation. I think we need to be informed on this and educated on this and just understand like what cannabis and hemp is. So I don't know. I just felt like I just should share this, and I thank you. I yield back.
Very good. Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward and speak? Very well. Seeing none, then we'll close the public address or public comment period. Public comment period is closed, and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Any discussion at all from the commissioners then? I guess Commissioner Dickerson and I did a good job working with staff on this one. We did. Very well. Then this is not associated with any particular district, so the chair will look for a motion in general to approve or deny.
So moved.
So we have a
To
motion
approve.
from Commissioner Goodwin to approve. Is that what I heard? Yes, to approve
With the noted change.
With the change.
with the noted changes?
Yes.
With the noted changes.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve with the noted changes. Any further discussion? Ms. Johnson, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Painting?
Yes.
Mr. Dissisler?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Quarles? Mr. Quarles?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Kersey?
Yes.
Very well. The ordinance change passes. So that completes the public hearings for the month. Under new business, I'm not aware of any new business that we have to be brought forward. So we can move on to the discussion item. The discussion item tonight is a suite of ordinance changes. 2025-01 Ms. Buckler, we were in the middle of discussing those during the work session. If we can pick up where we left off there, and we can move forward with that. I believe we were at
Communications regulations?
I believe it was the telecommunications, was it not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, very good.
So, the language here is, as I stated earlier, language that has been suggested by the telecommunications consultant to help in reviewing telecommunications applications for co-locations and modifications to existing towers. Mr. Eglin works closely with the consultant and may have some additional information to share about this language.
Evening again, everybody. So you have emails been handed out to you this evening. I apologize. It's at the last hour here. We have a relatively new consultant on board to us, started towards the very tail end of 2024. And as we continue to get applications, and we've received many colo applications so far this year, as well as a couple, at least one new tower. We're continuing to learn some of the things that the consultant needs to have added to our code so that they can request certain information that they would like to have in order to do a thorough review. So in your packet, you have the language in black font that you see in the email that was passed out today. And our consultant has suggested that we not only adopt the language that is in your packet, but also add the language in blue. And then there's some language in a yellow highlight, and I'll explain the difference between the black, blue, and yellow language. So the black language allows the county and the consultant to request a 5-year study of the tower itself to confirm that the tower has been inspected, so that when a company comes to add equipment to the tower or replace equipment that's on the tower, that there's not based off of assumptions in the structural analysis. The blue language is pretty much the exact same thought process, but for the actual structural mount that the equipment is going to on the tower. So the black language is for the tower. The blue language would be for, typically a tower has 4 rad positions, and each one of those rad positions they could request a study that position is in a good enough condition that it would support new equipment on top of it or adding equipment for the first time. And then the yellow language is something that is a recommendation that the consultant puts in their analysis reports for the co-locations that we get. But putting in the yellow would allow the county to require that after the equipment is placed on the tower, that a report is provided, signed and sealed by an engineer stating that the work has been done in accordance to what was reviewed and approved by our consultant. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm going to grab my computer real quick, too.
Questions for Mr. Eglin about telecommunications updates?
One thing I'll add on with the yellow language, and I've spoken to the building official just to kind of give some idea of why the language is in yellow, is the building official does not have the authority under the state building code to request an inspection after the equipment is placed on there. So we provide our consultant reviews the application. They give a recommendation of approval based off of the information, such as structural analysis and things like that. But our building official's not strapping on a harness and going up to 198 feet on the tower to check out the equipment, right? And our building official's not a licensed PE or engineer who specializes in telecom. And again, that's why I talked to the building official, that he does not have the authority to request these particular items, because believe it or not, it seems that this particular work might be exempt from the Virginia State Building Code from his review.
There are no questions for Mr. Eklund. I'm inclined to move on. Very well. Thank you, Mr. Eklund.
Thank you.
Let's move on. Ms. Buckley?
The second change to the telecommunications regulations is to indicate that generators should not be operated at wireless communication facilities or WCFs except during power outages or during testing. We are striking the language stored because generators are a standard piece of equipment at a telecommunications facilities when they are constructed. The last part of the proposed amendments deals with the sign regulations and electronic messaging signs. There has been a lot of conversation and communication to staff about the brightness or the light intensity of electronic message signs at night. So we are looking to strengthen the language in the ordinance. It currently just states that signs have to be dark sky compliant. So there was an original draft. There have been two options after that. We are open to suggestions of, we're trying to find the most efficient and easiest way for both the applicant and staff to enforce and regulate the lighting of the electronic message signs. The more research we do, the more information we find, so it's kind of evolved. That's why we have three different drafts in front of you. The last one that we handed out tonight, labeled as alternative option 2 at the top, right now seems to be the option that the staff that's been reviewing this is most favorable of, and there will probably be some other minor adjustments under just the general provisions. The language is a little confusing because it combines both flashing signs and electronic message signs under one category, and they're two different defined sign types. So we will be doing some additional work to help clarify those issues as well. As far as the interval for the change of the messaging, we have reached out to VDOT in order to try to be consistent with like the VDOT, the portable VDOT signs that are put out, what change interval they use for those signs. We are also looking at purchasing a light meter to measure some of the existing signs to gauge if this is going to work properly. So we're going to be doing that in the very near future, hopefully within the next week, so we can make sure that we're headed in the right path with this language. But we've done a lot of research in other localities. We've contacted 6 different sign companies that have applied for permits with the county. We got a lot of really good information from one of those sign companies about the electronic messaging signs, where newer signs can be equipped with automatic sensors that are programmed to dim at night and or cut off. A lot of localities require that electronic message signs cut off at 11 p.m., come back on at sunrise. Older signs, electronic message signs can't be retrofitted, but what he indicated was that the operators or the owners of those signs have the ability to control the brightness of them. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking to get the light meter, so we can kind of just gauge some of the signs that we've heard concerns about and see how they comply with either the dark sky lighting or how they may be way off from what we're proposing. So,
One thing strikes me is it sounds like great research, and appreciate that. Before you spend money on a light meter, I think most of these things have light meters in them. There's probably an app. If you don't need, you don't need the light meter to be calibrated to a standard. You're just getting information. You can probably pull up an app and do it with one of these.
and that was mentioned in some of the research.
Free.
That we've done on this, that there are some iPhones.
Yeah.
You can get an app that would,
I've done that with Sound Meter for this. It's a free app, and it works. It's a NIOSH app, and it's free, and it works great, and it's not calibrated at all. So I can't take it to a standard and say it's this or that, but I can sure tell you whether it's loud or not.
and that's something that we'll look into
Sure. Yeah.
before we do purchase a light meter.
Save some money. Anyone have any commentary on the three options on signs? My only comment is I think alternative option 2 is much cleaner than the original alternative option and provides maybe better guidance.
And that is staff's thought as well. The one that we are leaning to being our preference. Like I said, these kind of evolved as we did more research, and it's more clear, it's more concise. So.
Very good. And let's see, I believe, did that complete the ordinance changes?
That is all of the proposed changes. We have included a draft subdivision agreement, the current interim road maintenance agreement. We've provided those to Ms. Smith to look at, along with all of our bonding forms that, as we move to or look to possibly require that the security be increased every 24 months, what may need to be done to our current forms if the regulations are amended.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Goodwin.
question for staff. Like the chairman, I think the alternate number 2 is much clearer, much cleaner. There's a lot of, I'll call it scientific language in the third option that I had to read about 4 or 5 times, and I'm not sure I still got it. Is there something in there that we need to capture, or is that just purely another option?
It's
Is it anything that we really want to get out of this? I mean, we're talking about illumination versus distances and.
The more research we did, we found language that made it easier to regulate and enforce, and so that's why we prepared the second option that didn't include all the distances and that sort of thing.
Right.
We believe that this will meet the intent of what we are trying to achieve by making sure that we're not creating any safety hazards or traffic hazards, driving conditions at night with the brightness of the lights, that the option number 2 will provide us with the regulations to do that.
Okay, thanks, I appreciate it, thanks, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so we've heard and discussed all of these ordinance changes. I'd like to make a proposal because of some discussion we had earlier, because one of the things we're trying to do tonight is move through these ordinance changes and get them ready for public hearing, which I think we're good on most all of them. But we did identify some things earlier with problems with definition for emergency shelter regarding Code of Virginia versus our code, and how we apply that along with religious assembly. I think that particular issue is going to take some research from the staff's point of view to make sure that we properly define what we're going to, or what we have with regard to the state for an emergency shelter, and also whether or not a homeless shelter needs to be added to correct our local code so we have something we can work with. And that all wraps up into the religious assembly. I believe staff needs time to look at that and get that worked out right, and we need at least one more work session to go through that and to understand it more carefully, what the staff comes up with, and how we make sure that we get into alignment correctly with the Code of Virginia. So I would propose that we remove those items from this package of ordinance changes for now, and we consider the ordinance changes outside of those items for public hearing next meeting in May. And we'll take the shelter and religious assembly issue and move that into a work session next month, and make sure we get that worked out correctly so that correctly reflects what we do, what the Code of Virginia requires, and how we're going to address the whole religious assembly issue. And then we'll have that ready for public hearing. But I don't know that we have enough information, particularly without the staff investigation, to act on that tonight. I'd rather give it time to get it right so we know what we have. So if, would the commission agree with that idea?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Very well. Does the commission have any other comments on the remaining ordinances in this ordinance change package?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Quarles.
is there a reason why, when it comes to the state code and on the last issue versus ours, why wouldn't ours mirror that? Is there a reason why our code would be different than the state code?
I think it's unclear to us why our code is different, and that's part of the research that staff's going to do to help us understand if there's any difference that we don't perceive right now that's not clear to us. They're going to let us know that. I can think of no reason why we would necessarily have a different definition, but there may be a good reason, and we need to know all of that before we make a decision.
Okay. Understand. It just seems to me that it'd be very simple just to mirror the state code. But if there's a situation that's different here than somewhere else in the state, then we probably need to investigate that.
Very good. All right, are there any other discussion on any other parts of this code change proposal? And the chair would look for a motion to move this ordinance change to public hearing in May with all of it except for the emergency shelter and religious assembly sections.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Goodwin.
I move that we move the collection of ordinance changes to public hearing stage at our next meeting, with the exception of the issue of emergency shelter, homeless shelter, and religious assembly, getting that correct. And also with the clarification that we are looking at alternative number 1 for lighted signs.
Mr. Good, let me clarify that you want to look at option number 1 or alternative option number 2?
The option 1, not the original. This is the first option. In my mind, we have 2 options in addition to
We have
which-
3.
Okay, then this is number 2.
Alternative option number 2. Very good. Okay. Just to clarify. We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Very well. Ms. Johnson, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Painting?
Yes.
Mr. Justiceway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Quarles?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Kersey?
Yes.
Very well. The ordinances will move to a public hearing next month. And also, Ms. Buckler, can we rely on you all to do some research and to prepare, and Mr. Kuhn, and prepare a new definition for emergency shelter? And let's talk about the changes we had, make the changes we had for religious assembly, and we'll also look at, can you do some research on homeless shelter in surrounding localities so we understand what other localities are doing for that, and whether or not there's a conflict with those, with state ordinance. We might as well look at that too, to make sure we get this thing as correctly stated as possible. Very good, and we'll do that for work session in May. Yes. All right. Well, that brings us to reports, Ms. Buckler. If you have one for us, or if you don't have one for us, it's fine. No reports this month? All right, very good. I have no announcements, so the chair will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Quarles.
this statement as to why I'm remote, that was not covered.
Mr. Quarles, would you care to tell us why you were remote and where you are? I think is the way it goes.
Okay. I'm working out of state in Connecticut, and I'm speaking to you from Nyack, Connecticut.
Very good. Thank you, sir, and thank you for reminding me of that, keeping me straight. Very well, then. The April meeting is adjourned.